Hello, it is I, some degenerate on the internet, here to bring you yet again another video discussing the various tips, tricks, and systems involved with Path of Exile. So in this video I'm going to be talking to you about the various currencies that exist in the game. Path of Exile is kind of weird in that what you collect are, like, the thing that you're really trying to get for the most part is crafting materials. And because the crafting materials are so useful in like the creation of items, they actually have become their own form of currency for trading in game. So you both use the currencies to purchase items in from shops and various characters in game, and then the community has also internally come up with um, their own price ranges for what each of these things are equivalent to each other respectively, and they sort of like go sort of in a scalar fashion up from least expensive to most expensive of currencies, and you can sort of use them when you collect the currencies in game. You can use them to craft items for yourself, but typically a lot of the higher end currency that's actually really good in many cases is more useful being used to trade specific unique items or good rolled rares so that you can get gear more effectively, because getting good gear in Path of Exile in terms of the RNG of getting good drops is kind of shit for the most part. You have to get pretty lucky to get something that's actually worthwhile, and that's especially true for unique items. Getting the correct uniques to make like jank builds work correctly is extraordinarily difficult unless the unique has a specific card that you can collect to get it, like that guarantees you get a specific unique. Getting the one you want can be pretty hard. So trading for the community is usually the best way to go, which is why solo self-found is the worst way to play the game, in my opinion. So anyway, let's discuss what all of the currencies do. So the first one you'll see in the game, and you start with your inventory. I think you get like 3 or 4 of these when you make a new character. They're scrolls of wisdom. They're scrolls of identify, the same as any other RPG basically. You click on it, you click on an item that's not identified, and it tells you what the item is. There are 2 benefits to that. The first is the obvious, that items are not identified when you pick them up typically, so if you want to know what the stats are, you gotta identify it. The second reason you do this is if you've no intention of actually using the item, even if you had good rolls on it, you can A, sell the item to another person via trading, as discussed earlier, or you can trade it to the vendor, and the vendors will give you sort of a codified number of things based on the thing you're giving them. So rare items give you shards for alteration orbs, or occasionally, depending on the items you give them, they can also give you orbs of augmentation. There's a couple other rules involved with that for what they give you, which I may discuss in a separate video as well. But basically, you either identify an item because you want to actually use it, or you identify it because they give you more stuff at the shops when you sell them if the items are identified versus if they're not identified, with some exceptions. The second thing is a portal scroll. Again, same thing as any other RPG. It's a scroll of portal. It opens up a portal, and it takes you back to the current waypoint. So, for example, there are currently 10 plus 1 acts. The epilogue is the post game, where you go into maps and do the end game content. There are 10 acts in the game. So, for example, if I am currently on Act 5 and I open up a portal scroll, it will give me a portal back to the hub world, or the hub area for that act. So in this case, for Act 5, for example, that would be the Overseer's Tower. So every time I open up a portal scroll from anywhere, any of the other areas in that act, it'll bring me back to the Overseer's Tower. If you're in the post game and you are doing map content, instead the portal scroll will bring you to your hideout instead. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Next up, we have these 5 items at the top here are all involving increasing the quality of items, and each one of them has a different quality effect for items. So, for example, the whetstone increases the quality of weapons. Weapon quality and armor quality is very standard. Weapon quality increases the base physical damage of the item, and sometimes increases some of the passive benefits of the item as well, like attack speed or accuracy or other things like that. A armor scrap increases the quality of armor, and increasing armor quality just increases whatever its item, like its secondary defensive stat is. So if it's an evasion item, it increases the invasion rating. If it's an armor item, it increases the armor. If it's a intelligence item, then it increases the energy shield, and so on. And if it's hybrid, then it increases both of the stats that item gives you. I don't think I have any hybrid items on currently, so you can't see that. So you can increase the quality of every item in your inventory that are in the main slots. So you can increase weapons or shields, respectively, which I guess count as weapons as well. You upgrade them with blacksmith whetstones. You can increase the quality of your helmet, your body armor, your gloves, and your boots. Jewelry can't have quality on it, so you can essentially ignore that. Glass blowers baubles increase the quality of flasks. Increasing flask quality has two basic effects. It generally increases the duration of the flask if it is a secondary flask thing, like it doesn't have a primary give you back a resource, it just does passive things. Then increasing the quality just increases the quantity, or the duration of the flask itself. So you can see there it's at 4.8 seconds because the quality is 20%. I believe if I did not have any quality on it at all, it'd be like maybe 33 seconds perhaps, I think, or maybe it's even 4. So I think I get the point. I think I get 0.8 seconds for having the flask quality on it. And as you can see, the duration of each individual flask changes depending on what kind of flask it is and what kind of rolls it has. So you can see this one has increased duration as one of its blue effects down there, and this one does not, which is why this one's only 4.8 and this one gets up to 6.10. Anyway. And the fourth one is a gem cutter's prism. This improves the quality of gems. Gem quality adds an additional benefit to each individual gem, and it's different for every kind of gem and every individual gem itself. For damaging spells or melee abilities, typically the quality will increase some modifier of it that just increases the damage typically, or just makes it just generally increases its effectiveness. So Righteous Fire, I don't think the quality matters literally at all, because if I'm not mistaken, increased quality of Righteous Fire increases its spell damage, and you almost never use spells while using this anyway, so it's completely irrelevant. But support gems are almost always, and spell gems also typically are pretty good to have quality on, but support gems are always really good to have quality because they almost always have an additional modifier for damage if they have quality, so you almost always want to have quality on your gems, 20% being the maximum for anything in particular. And the last one is a Cartographer's Chisel. Chisel increases the quality of maps. Improving the quality of a map just increases the quantity of items that drop from the map, and that's obviously good because item quantity means more drops of items, and more drops of items means more chances to roll better stuff. So, for example, item rarity only affects the rarity of items. It doesn't affect the rarity of quantity, or for currency. Currency has no rarity associated with it. So the only thing that increases the amount of currency you get is the number of items that drop. So that's why quantity is the preferred stat to go for when you're going for magic find characters, because more quantity means more drops of currency, and currency is really the only thing that matters in this game. Next up on our list, we have the more specified crafting materials. So Orbs of Transmutation upgrades a normal item, so a white item, to a magic item, which is a blue item. These are mostly used in late game for changing flasks to blue. Flasks can only be blue. They cannot be rare. So you typically use an Orb of Transmutation after you increase the quality. Oh, and I forgot to mention this as well. It costs more quality items to upgrade the quality of different rarities. And the cost increases with each individual rarity level. So if an item or a thing is white, you get 5 quality per currency item used. If it's blue, then it gives, I think, 2% per item used, and if it's a rare, then it costs you get 1% for each one used. So you always want to increase the quality of an item before you start crafting on it, because you'll use up less of your currency to do so. So anyway, so the first thing you do is, if you're making a new flask for, say, if you want to have a flask like this, first you take a white unmodified flask, you increase its quality using the Glassblower's Bauble, you make it blue using an Orb of Transmutation, and then if it has only one roll, you might pop a Orb of Augmentation, which enchants a magic item with an additional random modifier if it has space for one. Magic items can only have 2 rolls on it, a suffix and a prefix. So if I roll it to make it a blue item and it only has a suffix, I can use one of these to give it a prefix. So what you do is you do that, and you see what the rolls are, and if you like them, then you keep it, and if you don't, then you use this, an Orb of Alteration. Orb of Alteration just reforges it with new properties. Basically, it just takes any blue item and re-rolls its suffixes and prefixes, and it can have a suffix and a prefix, it can have a suffix or just a prefix, one or the other. So you don't know what you're going to get when you use it. It could be one, it could be the other. And then you basically just keep doing that, rolling the blue with this, and then maybe adding an additional prefix if you like the suffix that you have, or if you like the prefix you have, you can get another suffix with this. And you just do that over and over and over again until you get the flask, the modifiers on the flask that you like. So this one, you always want to have a immunity to blank, and then something that increases either the recovery rate or makes it instant or some bullshit like that for life flasks. So I like to have bleed on my flasks because I'm really dumb and don't pay that much attention when I'm playing this game. So if I'm about to die from a bleed, it's really helpful to have it on my life flask because A, I get healed from the flask and that removes my bleed for the duration of the flask. So I can't get re-bled while this is up. Some people prefer to have bleed immunity on something that has a duration like a sulfur flask, because that way if you're in traps in the lab and you keep getting constantly hit by them, you can pop that and they won't bleed you while you're like standing in them, which can be helpful if you're continually getting bleeds reapplied to you. You're immune to bleeds while you have this flask up, so you can't have bleeds, they can't be put on you, and they take the effect off the instant you drink it. So that's pretty helpful. So you want to have one that does bleed, one that removes freeze and chill. If you're not immune to these things, you want a curse immunity flask, and then depending on your character, sometimes you also want an immunity to like shock or poison or some other bullshit like that. Next up, we have. Oddly, despite the fact that most of these other things over here are relatively cheap currencies, we have an Orb of Annulment. Orbs of Annulment are really expensive right now because the latest, not season, the latest, I'm blanking on the title of the thing. Our latest thing, Synthesis, the League, that's what it is. The Synthesis League has these items that are synthesized that have new inherent, not prefixes, inherent, and not... God, what are they even called? I'm totally blanking right now. So items have inherent quality, like properties to them. So for example, Stygians have an implicit, yes, thank you, implicit modifiers. So the implicit for the belt, this is that it has an abyssal socket. That can't be changed unless you corrupt the item. So that's really good because that means I can like scour this item and like re-roll it and like craft on it, but it will always have that abyssal socket. So most items in the game have like have very set codified implicits that are specific only to them, which is good and bad. It means that there's a very like set list of items you want to get for crafting on in the late game. So what makes the Synthesis League so weird is that they have these fractured items that have new implicit modifiers you can craft on them. So they have they're these white fractured modifiers on it, and if you combine 3 of these fractured items together, you create a new implicit on the crafted item. And some of the implicits are really fucking good. So for example, if you combine 3 boots that have upwards of I think it's 95% movement speed, as in each individual belt could have like 35, and if they all add up to above 100, then, or around 100%, then you get permanently Onslaught, just flat out the statistical modifier Onslaught, which increases your movement speed and your attack speed and maybe even your action speed. But it's a really good mod. Silver Flasks give it to you, and it's really fucking good. And the boot just has it as an implicit, which means it can't be. If you scour the item, you can then craft on it as much as you like, and you will always be able to re-roll it back to having the Onslaught modifier. Like, the Onslaught modifier cannot go away. And that's really, really good. So the reason why this is so good is that if I have the item, the initial boot has one roll that I really like say it has, as its white property, it has the movement speed, and I want to also have the crafted item have life as well. I can scour the item, and it will keep the white text, the movement speed, and then I can use, or alternatively, if I if I get something else that's good, like it has life as the white text, but I want only movement speed, I can make the item blue and roll for a second property and keep scouring and like popping more of these on it over and over again until I get the properties I want. Or alternatively, if I'm crafting a high tier yellow item, so let me go to, I have an example of this on Synthesis League. Basically, the high tier of crafting at the moment is that you get a rare base and you roll the item until you get, as a blue item because it's easier to roll that, until you get a property that you really actually like. Nope, I'm sorry, this is the wrong character. Ignore this character. No, that is the character. What the fuck? Did I have it swapped off of her other weapon set? I had her swapped onto her other weapon set. Okay. Yes, so the big damage boost on characters right now, specifically Winter Orb, is this one. Gain percentage of elemental damage as extra chaos damage. I'll discuss why this is so broken when I go over some of the different builds, but basically you want to take this rare item, and it needs to be a Shaper or Elder item. I think this is a Shaped. I think this is specifically Shaper, yes. So Shaper items, you can tell they're Shaper or Elder because they have these really weird backgrounds behind them, and they have a bunch of different modifiers that are specific only to them. So you basically take this as a white item, you scour it, and then you make it blue, and you keep using alterations and augmentations to roll until you get only the gain percentage of elemental damage as extra chaos damage. Preferably, or that and some other really good modifier like the increased elemental damage or something. And then you make it blue, or sorry, rather you make it a rare item using a Regal Orb, which upgrades magic items to rare. And when that happens, the rare item gets an additional property added to it. Because magic items can only have 2, rare items can have up to 6, but if you use a Regal Orb, you only get a third one. So what you do is you get the extra chaos damage and maybe another good property, or maybe not. Ideally, you'd only want the extra chaos damage. Then you upgrade it to rare using a Regal Orb, and then you use the Orb of Annulment, which I'll go back to so you can see it again on the previous thing. So you go back to the Annulment Orb, and what the Annulment Orb does is it randomly removes one property off of the item that you're crafting on. So with the item before, so say I make it rare, and I have the percent of chaos damage is extra, or of elemental damage is extra chaos damage or whatever. And I have some other property that I don't care about, like adds fire damage for like +1 or whatever. So what I do is I take that item and I pop the Orb of Annulment and I pray to the RNGesus that it removes the other property, not the chaos one, but the other, whatever the other property is. And now I have a rare item that only has that property, the extra chaos damage as whatever. And then I add, I'm not sure I even have it on this particular character, on this like this league on standard yet. Let's see if I. Yeah, so I haven't discovered it in this because I just got this in my Synthesis League, but can have multiple crafted mods. Typically, you're only allowed to craft one property. You can see it there. It's the light blue below the blues there. I crafted that onto the item. And you can see I've done it on a couple of these items as well. You can typically only do that one time. With the can have multiple crafted mods, you can craft as many as you like until the item is filled with all 6 properties. So the downside to that, of course, is that this takes up one of the properties. So you've lost one stat, like potential stat on the item. The upside is that you get to pick what the other things of the item are completely. And that means you also get to pick the tier of those prefixes and suffixes when you craft on the item. So like you don't have to like pray that you get a tier 1 spell damage roll. You just get it for free automatically because you're the one picking it. Or if you want the fire damage or the cold damage or what have you, it doesn't matter what you want. You get to pick what you put on the item. And that's really fucking good because that's how you can make basically not quite mirror tier but very expensive items doing this. So that's why annulment orbs are so expensive, is because you can use these to essentially force the fractured items to have only a specific pool of stats, so you can really basically figure out exactly what kind of synthesized item will come out. So that's what people are doing. So they're basically using these to force the game to give them, the onslaught boots or like the percentage increased life armors or some other dumb bullshit. It's pretty dumb. Next on our list, we have an Orb of Chance. Orbs of Chance upgrades a normal item to a random rarity. So the benefit of this is that it can upgrade a white tier item to a unique, but only in the pool of the item type. So for example, Calm's Heart is a glorious plate. You can see that that's the item type. If I pick up a white glorious plate and I use a chance orb on it, it has a very, very, very tiny chance of becoming the Calm's Heart. So we refer to this as chancing. I don't actually recommend you do it because the actual percentage chance of getting a unique item is incredibly slim, and it's almost always less expensive to just sell the Orbs of Chance and buy the item you actually want. So I would only do this if you're trying to get something that's like incredibly expensive, like a Headhunter or any of the other like mirror tier worthy items you can get off of it. And of course, the other reason you might be doing this is that there is an achievement / trophy / Steam thing for chancing from a white item, a unique. So, there's that. It's also somewhat beneficial to use these on the lock boxes, because lock boxes can also have unique variations of them, and you can get like really good stuff off of those. So we're going to skip the middle here. We'll come back to these. This middle section is the most expensive currencies, which is why I'll talk about those last. We already talked about Regal Orbs. They're pretty basic. They upgrade the magic item to a rare item. Just keep in mind, however, that when you upgrade from magic to rare, you only get 1 extra property. So you don't get 6 rare properties when you upgrade. You only get 3. So this is really helpful for the crafting I discussed, because you have less properties to take off of the item. It's also very good for jewels, because jewels can only have 4 rolls on them by max anyway. So like only having 1 less isn't so bad. So it's actually pretty great to use these to upgrade a jewel. So if I have like life and a damage mod on a jewel, I can pop a Regal Orb on it and then maybe get a good 3rd property, and then boom, I've got like several hundred chaos worth of a jewel for free. It's pretty unlikely, but it's something. The bottom section of these, I haven't talked about these yet because they're kind of self-explanatory, but they're shards. And each one of them, you get 20 shards, and they give you 1 of the actual thing itself. Yep. Next up, we have Orb of Alchemy. This upgrades a white item to a rare item. It works exactly the same as the Orb of Transmutation, but just upgrades it to a rare instead. You're mostly going to be using these in the early game on good white items to get a decent rare item to use for leveling, or the thing they're used most consistently for is for upgrading maps to rares, because you have to upgrade the gold tier maps. Everything above the white tier. So it's blue. So you start off at blue tier, then you move up into gold tier, and then red tier. Gold tier are sort of in this middle section around here, and to get the map bonus, you can see that I've finished these maps because they have that sort of gold circle around them. That means I've finished the secondary properties. So the ones up here, you have to beat a blue map. The middle ones are you have to beat a rare map, and the red ones, which you can't see because I haven't actually done any like new Atlas stuff on standard recently, is you just have to beat them as a rare corrupted map. So yes, that's what those are typically used for. Next up is Chaos Orbs. Chaos Orbs are probably the most consistent thing that are used for buying items on the shop. They're either use Orb of Alchemy for like really cheap uniques, or Chaos Orbs for pretty much everything else. Chaos Orbs are your bread and butter currency that you use to buy stuff. And Chaos Orbs reforges a rare item with new random modifiers. It's essentially for rare items what an Orb of Alteration is. It does exactly the same thing. It just re-rolls the stuff. Basic bread and butter. So I don't recommend you ever use this for its intended purpose, because that's dumb, and like the opportunity that you're going to get what you want is pretty minimal. I think in terms of getting rings with specific properties, so like getting Elder or Shaper rings with like curse on hit stuff, you're just honestly better off rolling it as a blue and just using this shit instead. I feel that's almost always less expensive. Or just buy one off the shop because somebody else has gotten one for sure. They always do. So just save them up and use them to buy stuff. That's my recommendation. Next, we have Blessed Orbs. Blessed Orbs randomize the numeric values of the implicit modifiers of an item. So some things, not these. Like, for example, this is an implicit that can't be rerolled because it can only ever have 1. You can't increase that. It can't be changed. I can't get like 3 abyssal sockets or something ridiculous. It only has the 1, so it can't be changed. But, for example, this has an evasion rating. And I think evasion ratings, armor, and energy shield and all that stuff can't be changed either, because the implicit flat ratings of evasion and stuff are set to the item type. So this is a noble tricorn, so that has a specific set amount of evasion rating that cannot be altered as well. However, other things, so for example, this unique item has an implicit that has between 20 to 30 life. So I wouldn't use it for this because that would be a waste of the currency, but I could use the Blessed Orb to re-roll this and potentially get it all the way up to 30. And this no longer has it. Actually, I don't think this even has an implicit. But yeah, so example, this one, I think this one doesn't have rolls. Yeah, you can see it just says 32%, so that's flat. It can't be changed. It's always 32%. But other uniques may have an implicit modifier that has a range that you can change it to, and you would use this to re-roll those until you get the one you want. The ones you see more people using are Divine Orbs. These randomize the numeric values of the random modifiers, which is everything that isn't the implicit. So the cast speed, the mana, the strength, etc. I can use the Divine Orbs to re-roll those properties, and the same is for any other item. The caveat for re-rolling things with Divine Orbs and Blessed Orbs is that if they have tiers, so you can see at the top there in the parentheses next to the value, it says the prefix is a viral and it's a tier 2, or the prefix for the armor is lobstered, so it's tier 5, and so on. You can't change the tier of its rolls with Divine Orbs. You can only change the values of that tier. So the item is flat set. It's locked at tier 4 for cold resistance or tier 5 for lightning resistance. I can use the Divine Orb to get the highest percentage of that tier, but I cannot change it to a higher tier. You'd have to re-roll the item to get higher tiers than that, which is why this item is trash, because those are terrible tiers. This is terrible tiers. These are all tier. Yeah, this is like, honestly, this is all just like complete shit. I really need to like go back into standard and play this character a bit to get some like decent items on this, because this is actually sad. But yeah, so if you have a very good unique or a very good rare that already has like the best possible tiers for stuff, it's beneficial to use Divine Orbs to re-roll them, so you can get the highest possible rolls. It's a pretty low percentage to get all of the highest possible for everything, so I typically don't try to get exactly perfect on everything. I just want to aim for around within like 3 to 4% of the top value, and that's usually good enough for me. Next, we have Jeweler's Orbs. Jeweler Orbs reforge the number of sockets on an item. I talked about sockets before, so you can see that Kalim's Heart is unique in that it has no sockets, but it gets like a fuck ton of life instead. But everything else in the game has sockets, and this lets you roll up to the maximum number of sockets. I believe so once you hit the maximum number of sockets, you cannot re-roll to a lower number. So if you're trying to get 4 or 6 or whatever the max number of sockets is for that item, which is determined by its item type and its level, you can just spam it, just click it, just hold shift click, and just click on the item over and over and over again until you get the max number, and you're good to go. You can also force this at the bench for a cost. I'm very good at spelling, as you can see. So yes, so you can see here that there's a flat value for rolling a number of sockets on the item. I actually recommend that you use the forced socket for 6 socket. Nah, actually maybe not. So I think 4 sockets is actually very respectable. I often find that I use more than 10 to get 4 sockets, and sometimes I get lucky and I take less. But in general, I think that the 10 is actually quite reasonable for 4 sockets, so I would recommend you always use the crafting bench to get 4 sockets, and you should also do the same for 4 links of sockets, because it only costs 5, what are these called? 5, only costs you 5 fusings to get a 4 stack, and you will almost always use more than 5 fusings to get a 4 stack. So just take the hit, use the 5, go to the crafting bench. And obviously fusings change the number of links on the item. Fusings can change the links on items that are not 6 links, because 6 links, there's almost no reason why you would want to not have 6 links on a body armor or a 2-handed weapon. So it will always let you roll up to 6, and then if you hit 6, it won't let you break it. That is not the case for lower amounts, because there actually are sometimes reasons why you'd want to not have helmets or boots linked. For example, on minion characters, There is a gem called Generosity that makes it so that your auras do not affect you, but have increased effect on minions or allies. So you want to have that on Hatred because it increases the cold damage your minions do, but you don't want it connected to Haste because Haste increases everyone's movement speed, and you want the movement speed on your character as well. So you want to have only Generosity linked to the Hatred, and then you want only Haste connected to something else, usually Enlightened or something. So yes, so that's what these do. These re-roll the number of sockets, and these re-roll the links. So there's a lot of debate as to whether it's better to re-roll to get sockets for 6 links, either by doing it manually or using the bench. It costs 1,500 to link an item using the bench to force it. So the obvious benefit here is that this is guaranteed. It cannot fail. You will always get a 6 link for 1,500 links. That's actually pretty good. Like the actual variance for the average number of links to get an item, if I'm not mistaken, is around between 800 and 1,200-ish. So 1,500 is not much higher than that. However, so here's the thing though. Lots of people report requiring way more than 1,500 links to get their items 6 linked rather. So this one is kind of like, I can't really tell you whether or not you should or should not like link your own stuff manually, because I've linked some stuff myself and I have gotten lucky, but for the most part I've been pretty unlucky. So I would say that my RNG for linking stuff is complete trash, and I always, these days, if I have an item I want to 6 link, I either go to the shop and buy it from somebody else that's already 6 linked, or I just take it to the bench and do it here because my luck is terrible. I think most streamers typically link it themselves because if you're going to link more than one thing, like if you have like, I don't know, 5,000 fusings and you're going to fuse like 6 or 7 items, it's actually better obviously in that case to go for the manual linking, because chances are good that if you're going to be doing that many items, your variance will trend on the lower end of the scale, so you'll get luckier with more items. That's the general consensus among people to play. So in my opinion, if you're only going to be playing one character and you only need one item 6 linked, just take it to the bench and do it manually. It's cheaper that way, and it's also a lot better because you know exactly how many you need to get that 6 link. So it's something you can physically work for, and you can see it visually. Next up is chromatic orbs. Chromatics reforge the color of the sockets on an item. So, you know, is it green, is it blue, or is it red? You just re-roll the thing, and then you're good to go. Or maybe yellow. Maybe it's yellow. Yellow, green, whatever. That color. So there is a calculator online that will tell you what the average number of chromatics it will take to get the correct configuration of colors on an item. I might have discussed this earlier, but the stats on the item change the percentage chance of getting particular colors. Armor gives you more chance, or strength items give you more chances to get red. Dex gives you more chances to get yellow, and intelligence gives you more chances to get blue. So if you need to roll an item colors that are like different, so say for example, if this wasn't a evasion item, say this was a strength item and I needed to roll 3 blue and 1 yellow, the percentage chance of rolling these off colors, even using like forced bench colorations, would require thousands of chromatics. So if you're trying to off color something, for example, there is a chest called Death's Oath, which is a strength chest, and the chest confers a death aura that does, like, it's basically like a chaos based righteous fire. It damages everything that's around you, but all of the damage over time gems are blue or yellow. So since the item is red, your chances of getting the 6 links that are required for that, which are all blue and yellow, is incredibly minimal. So there's actually a trick you can do with the bench. So you can't use chromatics to, or sorry, not chromatics, but you can't use the jeweler's orbs to roll backwards to get lower amounts. However, you absolutely can use the crafting bench to do so. So, and the other fun thing about the crafting bench is that if you already have, if the socket is colored a specific way, if you roll up, it keeps the previous colors when you go upwards. So say, for example, I've got my Death's Oath, and I have 2 sockets on the item, and I roll them until I got blue. Or alternatively, I can just force them with this. So say I'd force it to make it 2 blue, or 2 green, whichever. Costs 25 chromatics. A low amount. So now I have 2 blue on the item. Now, I then use, I roll using the, or sorry, rather than rolling, I force using the bench to give 3 sockets. When I do so, it rolls that socket randomly. In addition, the percentage chance of it being... so I think actually the chance of it being a red, blue, or yellow is still the same as if I was using a chromatic. However, I can then, say for example I do that and I get the red socket. If I go back down to 2 sockets, it keeps the color that they already were because they haven't changed. But it does remove the third one. So then when I go back to put 3 sockets back on the item, I get another chance to re-roll that third socket to the one I want. So you just do that over and over again until you get the ones you want. So you do 3 sockets until you have 3 blues, and then you go to 4 sockets, and you do the 4th socket until you get like a blue or a yellow or whatever. And you do that over and over again until you get all the correct sockets. It's a little bit more tedious to do so with a 6-link item because the 6 socket and 5 sockets are much more of the jewelers than any of the other ones. But if you're trying to roll the correct colors on an Elder helmet that's red and you need to get it for Righteous Fire and you want to get blue, green or whatever, then it's a lot easier to do that using the sockets on the bench because it's first of all, the variance is a lot lower because you're spending a lot less of these than if you were trying to force it with the bench because it costs, I think, to 125 probably. So I would probably be rolling either 3 blue. Yeah, so I would probably be rolling 3 blue and then hoping that the extra one is green. So every time I want to roll that, I have to spend 120 of these. And I would probably take several of them to get it. So this could be anywhere from 120 if I get super lucky on the first one to like 360, 480, whatever. It could be a lot. Alternatively, using the socket method that I just told you, using the bench like this, you would use way less of these. And the number you use is only up to 10 per rolling the 4th socket, which is way less than spending 120 of these every single time. So that's my recommendation for rolling off colors. However, if you're rolling on color, so for example, I want 4 reds on a strength, just use the chromatics. That's perfectly fine. Also, if you're trying to roll, so say for example, I wanted to roll 3 blue and 1 red on this, I may just say fuck it if I don't really want to take the time. I'll just go to the bench and just force the 3 blue onto it for 120 because the chance that I'm going to roll not red on the 4th one is so minimal it's just not even worth talking about. Moving on, we have Parandus coins. Parandus coins are kind of an old league mechanic that has stuck around. They're kind of dumb. Basically, they literally work as a form of currency in-game. They serve so this is one of the only things in the game that is a quote-unquote currency that is a literal currency. Both in-game and in like the trading community. You can't actually use these to craft. What you can do, however, is that there's a dude called Parandus that only appears in maps that have the Parandus League modifier added to the map. You can force that using the map device. If I had it, I don't believe that I do, but you see Nemesis, Bloodlines, Ambush, etc. are all different leagues, like past leagues. You can force the map to have that league modifier by using these, and you unlock them as you get higher levels and like unlock the map more. So they also rotate which league modifiers are available in the Atlas every time they do like a new patch or a new rotation for leagues or whatever. So like currently I've got Ambush and Bloodlines and whatever and Nemesis, and it might be something totally different in the next league. So you can't count on those being consistent. But anyway, so if you have Parandus, Kadiro Parandus, I believe is the dude's name. You roll up to him and he basically opens up his shop and he'll have 1 item in a window. And it will tell you can have the item for an X number of Parandus coins. So it might be like, say I open up his shop and he has a Calm's Heart. Or, sorry, like a Calm's Way Coral Ring. It wouldn't be this, though. It would be the unfaded version of it. And it would be, like, something shitty. It's like 500 Parandus coins. You'd be like, yeah, fucking whatever. Take your 5. So you give him 500 Parandus coins and you get the item. So you literally spend the coins on items. The problem with Parandus coins is that all of the good uniques that you can buy from him are insanely expensive. Like, they cost more Parandus coins that is like, it beggars belief how many Parandus coins he asks for. It would be something like a Calm's Heart, for example, if he indeed has that in his drop pool, it would be something like 10,000 Parandus coins or something absurd. So The only reason you would buy Parandus coins is if you get Kadiro Parandus in your map, and he rolls up and he has a unique item that's really fucking good. Or alternatively, it's a unique item that's specifically good for your build. So what you'd do is you'd keep the map open, you'd go to the shop, or like you go to the trade, and you'd say, somebody trade me like 10,000 Parandus coins so I can buy this thing. And then you give them whatever they want. You give them like some Chaos Orbs or some Orbs of Alchemy or whatever the fuck, and you get your Parandus coins, you trade them, and you get your stuff. I think it's a pretty dumb mechanic. It's kind of like it's the odd man out in terms of currency because it has no other secondary purpose, unlike every other form of currency. So I don't know. It just feels kind of weird to have a literal currency in a game which otherwise has currencies that do stuff. Kind of weird. Silver coins are specifically used for Navali. So you go to her, you give her a silver coin like so, and she gives you a new prophecy. And each of the prophecies are different. I think Plague Maw is actually one of the... So you saw before when I was talking about crafting on this. So you can have multiple craft mods. It says the Pale Court. So basically there are several prophecies that have numbers. They're numeric. So you can see this one and this one that says Plague Maw 1. I think there's 4 of them specifically that give you, it's a 4-part prophecy chain for all 4 of them, so a total of 4 times 4 is 16. So with all of these together, you get the pieces of the Pale Court, which would be here. They're sort of purple chunks, and when you have all 4 of the pieces by doing these prophecies, you get access to the Pale Court. It's sort of like a boss arena where you get 4 dudes that rotate in, you fight them in chunks, and you do 25% of the first ones, then it rotates to the next one, and you do 25% of his life, and you do the next one, and so on. You do that a bunch of times until they're all dead, and then you get a unique item. And some of the unique items are really, really good. And some of them are completely shit. But the important factor of why people kill them is to get the modifier in the crafting bench. That's really the reason why people do it. So besides that, however, there's multiple other things you can get off of the prophecies. The most important ones typically are making fated unique items. So Calm's Way is the fated version of this item. I believe the original version is called Calm's Sign, and the Calm's Sign has basically the same stats. It's got the life, it's got the strength, it has the +3 life gain for each enemy hit by your attacks, and it has +1 to maximum endurance charges. So when you get the prophecy that upgrades this to the Calm's Way, it gets the additional modifier of the 0.4% of max life regen per second per endurance charge. That's very good for Righteous Fire because the more life regen you get, the better the build is. And this is a jug, so I get the endurance charges for free. So this gives me the endurance charge, the extra endurance charge this gives me a lot of extra damage, it gives me extra tankiness, and with this, I get extra percentage life regained per second. The prophecies also do a bunch of other weird bullshit. Typically it'll be something incredibly lame, like you'll open up a map and it'll have frogs in the map, or it's like the next enemy that you kill of this type will drop extra currency, typically the prophecies are kind of shit, and the really good ones are very, very low percentage chance to get. The benefit, however, is that you can see at the top it has a seal cost. I can spend extra silver coins to seal the thing, and it becomes an item I can give to people, and they get the prophecy. So you can buy the upgrade prophecy for the item, which is what I did for both of these, if I'm not mistaken. And alternatively, if you get a upgrade prophecy that you don't need, but is wanted by the player base because the build that uses that fated unique is very popular right now, you can sell it and make a lot of currency. So it's kind of a gimmick, but it's kind of a fun gimmick, I think. And more importantly, by giving the player options to upgrade uniques, a lot of uniques that were otherwise complete shit have become very good with this, which I think is pretty fun. Next up, we have Orbs of Scouring. Orbs of Scouring remove all modifiers from an item. Basically, it takes the item and makes it a white item instead. You can use this on any kind of item except for corrupted items. Corrupted items can't be modified except by forcing it on the crafting bench, but it costs. So, for example, if I wanted to make a corrupted item have 4 sockets, I want to change the socket colors or whatever, it costs the amount listed here and an equal amount of chaos orbs as well. So if I want to have this, if this was corrupted and I wanted to give it 3 green sockets, it would cost me 120 chromatics and an additional 120 Val orbs, which I'll discuss in just a hot second. But anyway, Orbs of Scouring are very useful for crafting for obvious reasons. If I roll the item and I don't like what it is, I can scour it, and then I can re-roll it. These are also useful for chancing. So, for example, this is a short bow, and I was trying to chance this into a Quill Rain because Quill Rains are a very low-level unique, and typically the number of sockets an item can have are dependent on the level of the item. So Quill bows, or rather Quill Rains, typically are too low of a level to roll 6 sockets. However, if I chance a short bow that's like item level, what is this? Item level 50 or above, then it can have 6 sockets. So somebody got, there's a card that does this, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's called Quill Rain. Do I not have any of them? Perhaps I have none of them at the moment. Or maybe it's because I have full stacks on. Or maybe I just have no cards in here. What the fuck? What's all this? Pretty sure it was called Quill Rain. Oh, sorry, the Porcupine. There you are. Yes. So this one, these cards, if I have 6 of them, I get a 6-link short bow with an item level of 50. And it comes out as white. And I think, actually, you have maybe perhaps a small chance for the bow that pops out of that to be the unique. Maybe not. I'm not sure. Whatever. The point is that you can use Scouring Orbs to make it white. I can use a Chance Orb on it. So here, I'll just demonstrate. So say that I make this white using my Orb of Scouring. Boop. Now it's white. I can then use a Chance Orb on it, and boop, now it's something else. So I didn't get the unique I want. So then I'd scour it again, and then I do it again. And you just do this over and over again until you get the unique you want. So as previously noted, I don't recommend you do this. I've already spent more Scouring Orbs and Chance Orbs than I'd really like to mention to try and get this to unique. So don't fucking do this. Buy it off of the trade instead. It will be less expensive that way. However, there are some cases where it will the expense is just going to be so outrageous that it actually is beneficial to do this. Currently, there is a chest that gives you a bunch of benefits if every single item in your inventory is a Shaper item. Or maybe it's Elder. They all have to be Elder items. So, the build that uses that chest typically wants to use a Pyre Ring. Pyre Rings are a unique ring. So, by definition, they cannot typically be a Shaper Ring unless you got insanely lucky on a Shaper map and just happened to drop that specific unique ring, which is not gonna fucking happen. So what you can do, however, is if you get a Sapphire Ring that is Elder and you chance it into the item, then lo and behold, it is now a Shaper Pyre Ring. So currently, it's so good to have that with that build. And it's so hard to do that all of those rings, the Elder Pyre Rings, are they're probably hundreds of exalts at the moment. It's insane how expensive they are. So that is a rare case in which scouring and chancing it is actually beneficial because there's no fucking way you're going to be able to pay for that amount of... I, at least in the current league that's doing that, I don't have enough exalts to buy one of those fucking things. So in that case, you're probably just better off scouring and chancing for it. Next up, we have Orbs of Regret. Orbs of Regret give you 1 passive skill refund point. So currently I have a free reset because this guy came off of a league. Every time a new league starts or they change the passive tree, they give you a free reset in which you can reallocate all of your points. But if that didn't happen, so say I'm in league and I make this character, and I'm like, oh fuck, I put my points in the wrong place, you can use refund points to take the node, take one of these off and put it somewhere else. So every time you use one of these Orbs of Regret, you get 1 point to reallocate. So it's typically actually kind of expensive to if, for example, I didn't have a full passive reset on this character, and I wanted to reset all of these, I mean, that's like 100. That's probably like hundreds of passive resets. So it'd be relatively expensive to use up all my regrets to do that. So I actually don't recommend doing that unless you like just have a bunch of these lying around. The other thing you can use these for is that when you kill the bandits in one of the quests for the game, you get a different passive benefit. If you choose to help one of the bandits, you get something. The witch gives you has permanently like 15% all max res. She gives you a bit of crit multi and some mana regen. Oak the bandit gives you like a flat 1% physical damage reduction, some global physical damage, and maybe some life regen. And the other one gives you attack speed and some other dumb bullshit. I don't know. I honestly don't know what he gives you because no one ever takes him. And the last one, which is I think the one that people take the most consistently besides the crit multi resistance one, is if you kill all of them instead, you get an additional 2 passive points. So if you decide you don't like the bandit choice that you made, you can spend, I think it's like 20 regret orbs and a specific ring to re-roll your bandit choice to something else. And that's the only reason you use these. So next up we have a Val Orb. I talked about this before about how items can be corrupted. Val Orbs corrupt the item and modify it unpredictably. So there's a couple different things that can happen. If you corrupt an item, you can completely destroy it, just the item is gone. You can, if it's a unique item, you can roll it to be a random rare item instead. It can re-roll the implicit modifiers on the item, which is what people typically want them for. That's the best outcome usually. So, for example, Calm's Heart doesn't actually have any modifiers on it. It has no implicit. So if you use the Val Orbs on it to roll the implicits, you can get really, really good implicits on this. So I believe the most expensive ones are either the ones that give you percentage increased max life, or the ones that give you like flat increases the damage on top of it. Or if you double corrupt it using the Val Temple, then you could get the damage and the life, which would be worth probably like a mirror or two or something ridiculous. So the obvious downside to this is that you can... Oh, and then of course you can also corrupt the item and it does nothing except apply the corrupted debuff to it. So, as noted before, if the item is corrupted, you can't do anything to it. You can't change it. You can't... Unless you force it with the crafting bench and spend a bunch of Val Orbs on it, you can't change the item at all. You can't scour it. You can't re-roll it with Chaos Orbs, or you can't change the implicit modifiers with Divine Orbs. You can't do fucking anything to it. It's just... It's corrupted. It's flat. It's unchangeable. So yeah, so this is really, so you can usually find 6-link items that are corrupted for very cheap because you can't change the colors of the item. So unless your build specifically uses those exact colors, the item is worthless to you. And no one is gonna spend hundreds of Val Orbs to fucking re-roll the colors of the item. So I'm not gonna spend like 25 or 120 Val Orbs to it's not fucking worth it. So I also don't recommend valing items yourself because, as previously noted, it can just destroy the item entirely. And because unique items can be very expensive, imagine how bad and sad you would be if you spent like 2 to 3 exalts on this Calm's Heart, and then you go to corrupt it to have it be really cool, and then it just fucking breaks, and you don't have a Calm's Heart anymore. You'd be pretty sad, wouldn't you? So don't fucking do that. I don't recommend these. Unless, alternatively, if you have a lot of currency, or if you already have one ready and you have a second one, then in that case, I would recommend that you'd val it yourself. If you have a bunch of things lying around that you want to val, go for it. As long as you can do it, like as long as you can take the hit of fucking it up a couple times, then you can do it yourself. But otherwise, don't bother. Next up, we have the Sextants. The coloration of the Sextants, the Apprentice, Journeyman, and Master, just changes what kind of map you're allowed to apply them for. Obviously, white maps can take the Apprentice, gold maps can take the Journeyman, and red maps can take the Master. And basically what you do is you click on it, like so. You take it to the Atlas, and you put it on the white item. You can see that sort of red ore is appearing. Now, it applies an additional modifier to all maps that are within that radius. So the cheeky thing you can do with this is that I can put one here, and one here, and all all the maps within that race. You can have up to 3 on the map at a time. I can only have none because I have not enough. I don't have enough quests. I don't have enough maps done to get any of them at all. If I have the entire map filled out, you can have a maximum of 3 of them. So I could theoretically have 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and when I run this map, if it's within the radius of all 3 of them, you can have, instead of only having like 6 or something properties on this map, you get the additional 3 of whatever these are too. So you can get some pretty insane map returns if you combine shaping the maps with putting up a bunch of sextants. For the most part, though, I'd recommend you save these up until you have something specific you want to be like. If you have a specific map that you're running to get like a particular card or a particular unique or something, then you should use these to help you. Otherwise, I would save them until you can hit the gold maps. Then it's actually beneficial to start spending currency to get currency. So last for the generic currencies are the 2 most expensive currencies in the game. We have Exalt Orbs, which are the other currency that is most often used as a barometer for how expensive an item is. So, for example, uniques that are very, very good, you typically use Exalts. 6-link items are also typically bought with Exalts. So I would say in League, after like initial prices die down, you can typically get a 6-link or a Calm's Heart for around 2 to 3 Exalts. Perfectly rolled 6-link items can typically go from anywhere between 7 to 9 Exalts, and if it's a very popular chest piece, like for example in this current league, Chaos builds are really, really good. So Chevron's wrappings are going for like 7 to 8 Exalts flat, even if they have no links whatsoever. Same for the item I was talking about that requires you to have all Shaper items to get a bunch of Chaos damage. Those are also going for like anywhere between 9 to 12 Exalts at the moment. It's ridiculous. So what the Exalts actually do is that they enchant a rare item with a new random modifier. So this is what people do when they have like a million fucking Exalts and they're just crafting mirror tier items at the end of the game, is they scour an item, they use blue, they roll the properties they actually want using alteration orbs and augmentation, and then they use the regal orb to make it a rare item, and then if they don't like the property, then they pray, use an Orb of Null to get the bad property off, and then they lock the prefixes using one of the crafting benches. Maybe it's under cannot. Yes, okay. So then they roll, prefixes can't be changed, or suffixes cannot be changed, and then they use the Exalt Orbs to get a new property onto the item. And they just do that over and over again, scouring and then exalting and scouring and exalting until they get properties they actually want. And by doing this, they can stack up all the best possible properties on the item. And then, like, maybe they craft one last property on at the end, and then boom, you've got a mirror tier item for you. Obviously, it costs an insane amount of Exalts, like hundreds of Exalts to do this kind of thing. So again, I don't recommend you do this yourself unless you have an excess of currency lying around to do this with. But typically, I just recommend that you stock up your Exalts and then you just buy whatever you want. So I've yet to find any Calm's Heart myself, nor have I been able to chance one. So every single league I need one of these, I just buy it from somebody, typically using a bunch of Chaos or a bunch of Exalts. Every single time, without fail. And that's how I recommend you spend your Exalts, just buy stuff with them. The last really good currency that I have none of, because they're super, super fucking rare, are mirrors. So you can see I have no pieces of them and I have no mirrors. Mirrors create a copy of an item. So say obviously you wouldn't use it on this because you can't, because it's corrupted. But if this was some kind of mirror tier 6-link rare chess piece with like max life, like the perfect tiers of life, percentage life, every single resistance, and like max resistances or some other bullshit like that, you might consider using a mirror on it, and then you sell the mirrored item. So you can tell it's a mirrored item because it would look like this but flip-flopped. So it's this item exactly, but just mirrored in reverse like this. And it'll, much like having a corrupted prefix on it, it will say mirrored at the bottom, and you can't change the mirrored item like beyond that. Like, it cannot be modified. It's a, much like being corrupted, you cannot change mirrored items. The major difference is that unlike with corrupted items, which you can force stuff with the bench, mirror items cannot be changed at all, as far as I'm aware. Like, maybe you can scour them. I don't think you can, and I don't know why you would want to, but I'm pretty sure they cannot be modified at all. So the benefit of this is if I, as a top tier crafting guy, have made a really, really good mirror tier item, I can have people pay me to create a copy of my item for them to use. So they pay for the mirror it costs to do this, the process of, copying the item, and they also pay me some kind of fee, like 90, 100 exalts or whatever, to get a copy of the item. And the reason I do this is because by having this process open, I can mirror my item as many times as I want and sell the copies to other people, and I get to keep the original. So it's kind of a way for the rich to get richer, as it were. Obviously, I don't have any because the drop rate on these is astronomically low. I probably will never see one in the entirety of my play experience. It's entirely likely that I'll never see one in my life. But if you do, don't fucking use it. Keep it and sell it to somebody else for hundreds and hundreds of exalts. Never use it, basically, is my recommendation on that one. Just use it for currency. Lastly, we have a couple follow-up ones down here. These are basically, all of these are currencies that can drop in Standard and in any league. These things down here are the secondary currencies that are either no longer in circulation or can only be obtained from different leagues. So maybe some of them can only drop on Nemesis. So if I get a Nemesis map, I can get them again. And some of them are quite good and go for pretty expensive amounts of money or currency to sell. So Orbs of Binding, I barely ever use these, but it upgrades a normal item to a rare item with up to 4 linked sockets. So say for example I am like at a low level character and I'm trying to get a 4-link item to level with. I can just use this Orb of Binding on the white item and boom, it's a rare item, it's got 4 linked sockets and I'm good to go for free. I don't actually ever really use these. I'm sure there are other people that have good usages of these, but they're basically just like a super Orb of Alchemy, which is probably why they are no longer in circulation, because I don't really need... It doesn't cost you a lot to have a 4-link item, so there is really no reason to have a currency that specifically gives you 4 links. I'd much rather just have the Orb of Alchemy in most places. Orb of Horizons, on the other hand, is a very useful currency item. So this reforges a map item as another of the same tier. So say, for example, I'm trying to fill out my atlas, and I'm at the 4th tier of maps. Let's maybe use a different example. Yes, okay. So say I have a bunch of beach maps, or actually, so in this case, I have 21 glaciers, and whatever I'm trying to get another one of this tier of items, so tier 4. And I'm trying to get my hands on a strand, and I just can't fucking get one to drop. Whatever I do, can't get the game to give me a strand. So you can either A, buy it from another player, or if you're insane and are playing solo self-bound and you have one of these, you can reforge the map to another of its tier. And if I'm very lucky, I could re-roll that lighthouse or that glacier or the crater into a strand map. Obviously, this becomes more and more useful at higher tiers. So, for example, if I have a bunch of Guardian maps, but I only have Minotaurs, I could re-roll this from the Minotaur into the Phoenix, or one of the other ones. And that could be quite handy. Harbingers is kind of like the next step above that. Instead of reforging to the same tier, it upgrades the map item to another of a higher tier. So say, for example, I have a tier 16 map, and I want a Guardian map. Well, I can just use this on a tier 16 map, and then boom, I have a Guardian map of one randomly. So that's pretty handy. And this is also applicable for any other tier as well. If I want to get a tier 15 map, I can just use it on the 14, a tier 14, and boom, I've got a tier 15 map, and so on. The Ancient Orb reforges a unique item as another of the same item class. So I'm not sure if this, I don't believe I've ever used these. I'm uncertain if this reforges the unique to the same kind of item. So for example, if it's a glorious plate, I'm not sure if it re-rolls it to another unique that's also a glorious plate, or if it reforges it to a different item of the same kind. So I could re-roll this this Calm's Heart into another unique chest. I'm not sure which of these it is. If it's of the same kind of item, so if it can only re-roll them within the same kind of glory, so if I re-roll a glorious plate Calm's Heart, it can only re-roll to another unique that is also a glorious plate. If it's that, these are really, really good, because there are some really good uniques you could potentially get using this. If it's just the same kind of item, as in like it's a different chest, then it's not as good. It's still potentially really, really good, because say I've got some garbage unique chest piece, I could potentially re-roll them into a Calm's Heart, and that would be really good. But in all likelihood, not going to be that useful, I think, probably. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. And we have an Engineer's Orb. Engineer's Orbs are a 6th form of stackable currency that improves quality, only this improves the quality of a strongbox. I don't really know why they discontinued this. I would assume it's because nobody cares enough to really do this on strongboxes that often. Like, improving the quality of a strongbox is probably just not worth your time and effort. I mean, most people don't even bother using currency on strongboxes, so the fact that exists items that can just improve the quality of items you don't even use currency on is kind of laughable. So some people go completely nuts if you get like a tier 16 map that has strong boxes and you have some of these lying around. Fuck it, put them on the strong box and then make it a rare strong box. Why not? But in general, I don't think this is worth ever getting. They're such a niche property. And the last thing that's on my list here is a necromancy net. This is from the Bestiary League. You could use this on a dead corpse to catch a dead beast. I just have it because you can't use these anymore, and I just think it's kind of funny to keep it. It's completely worthless. It serves literally no purpose in game anymore. You can't actually use it on anything. I just think it's funny to have it. I suppose I'll just go over quickly some of the other things. Essences let you re-roll an item with specific properties. You can kind of think of them as a Orb of Alchemy or kind of like an Orb of Binding, but instead of rolling it with random stuff, it always guarantees one property that it lists on the essence. So this one guarantees max life on armor, helmets, shields, other armors, etc., and so on. So each of these different kinds of essences guarantees some kind of random modifier when you craft the item. Some of these are really, really good, and most of them are really worthless. So just look at, honestly, I would recommend just keep all of these and save them for later. And if you get lucky, you'll get one that's really good. And lastly, we'll just discuss the fragments while I'm here, because some of these are technically also currencies. Divine Vessels, you can, there's a thing called the Pantheon in this game, which gives you sort of like secondary passive benefits. I'll just go talk to Sin so you can see what I'm talking about. So in the process of the campaign, spoilers, you kill gods, and you get their powers when you do so. And you get to pick two. There are 4 major pantheons you can pick from. This one prevents you from being stunned. This one decreases damage over time effects. This one gives you phys damage reduction when there's only one person near you, so it's good for bosses. And this one reduces physical damage reduction for each enemy that's nearby up to 8%, so this is good for mapping. And in addition to their major properties, which is the top one, which you always get for free if you pick it, there are these other ones at the bottom there, see? So, for example, capture Queen of the Great Tangle. If I go into a map and I want to capture the boss, and I believe the Atlas will actually tell you if... I don't think I have access to any maps that have these on them currently, but if you can... so here you are, exactly. Queen of the Great Tangle can be captured for Soul of Arcali on the Jungle Valley map. So, if I go into my map and I put a Jungle Valley into the map device, and I also put the Divine Vessel into the map device, when I kill the boss, it will suck up the soul into the Divine Vessel. Then I take that Divine Vessel back to Sin, and he'll give me that extra property. So this just is it's an additional passive benefit. Some of them are really, really good. For example, the Arcali one, that gives you increased recovery rate, I think is what it says. Yes. So this one has increased recovery rate of life and energy shield if you've stopped taking damage over time recently. So there's a very cheeky combo you can do with Blood Rage, which is a green gem. I probably don't use it on this character. But it gives you a physical dot over time, and in exchange it gives you a bunch of attack speed, it gives you a bunch of life steal, and every time you kill something you give a chance to get frenzy charges. So the downside, of course, is the physical dot that it gives you. However, there is a skill called, it's around here somewhere. or maybe I actually don't have it on this character. Most characters take, using cast when damage taken support, they have an additional gem called Immortal Call. Immortal Call makes you immune to physical damage for a brief time. It's like 1 second, I think, on base, and you can increase the duration of it by expending endurance charges. Basically, if you cast an Immortal Call and you have endurance charges, it sucks all the endurance charges into the skill and expends them to increase the duration of it. So if you're immune to physical damage, then your Blood Rage can't damage you, which means it automatically procs that 50% increased life recovery rate. And increased recovery rate, as I discussed earlier, is basically one of the best stats to have in the game. It just increases all life regain that you can get on the character. So with that cheap combo, you get the free 50% almost all the time, and it's fucking broken. Almost any build that has dot damage, so this build, a lot of other ones too, will just take that combo because it's just literally broken. It's great. Right, fragments. The top ones here are just pieces of maps that give you access to endgame bosses. This one gives you access to Shaper. These ones give you access to Edziri. The ones on the far right give you access to Uber Edziri, basically the same boss but harder. These give you access to Uber Lab. You have to expend one of these each time you want to enter the Uber Lab. These are fragments. These are splinters of the respective boss of the name. So Zoph is fire, Tool is ice, Esh is lightning, Ul Natal is chaos, maybe Chiula is chaos, and Ul Natal is something else. I actually have no fucking idea which one of these are. It doesn't matter. Anyway. And then if you have 100 of these, they combine into a Breach Stone. You can use the Breach Stone in the map device, and it opens up a portal to their domain. These are a unique instance where you have a timer to get through the entirety of the map. Most maps don't have timers on them. However, if you kill things in the map, it increases the amount of time you have to complete the map. So the idea is you enter the map and you fucking run through it as fast as possible, killing everything in your path until you get to the boss. And then the boss is really hard, and if you are successful in beating the boss, each of these Breach Lords have unique items that can only drop in their domain, and they're usually pretty good. One of them, for example, like Zoph's Heart is one of them. It's really fucking good. And then in addition to them dropping these unique items, they also drop a, what is it called? It's like an essence of Zoph, and if you use that essence on their unique item, it upgrades it to a faded version, and the faded version is almost always better. So the faded version of Zoph's Heart, I think is it Zoph's Blood and it becomes Zoph's Heart, I believe is the order. It might be the other way around, it doesn't matter. But the upgraded version gives you Avatar of Fire permanently, and also gives it so that when you are hit, or either when you hit stuff or when people hit you, you cover them in ash, which increases the fire damage they take, which is insane. I'm pretty sure that the high-end budget version of Righteous Fire requires you get one of those and have it corrupted to have a bunch of other dumb bullshit on it. It's really, really stupid. I talked about them before. The purple ones that you can't see because I don't have any of them right now are for the Pale Lords. They are specifically only the Pale Council have a bunch of different uniques they can drop, and you get crafting recipes for getting in there. And these are the Fragments of the Guardian, which you use to get to Shaper. You get them Shaper, and then if the Elder's influence covers the whole Atlas section, then you fight Uber Elder instead. And the grayed out pieces down here, which I've not filled yet because I might have sold all of them, but these are Scarabs down here. Scarabs are an additional material you can use on maps, and they give an additional modifier to them. I guess I'll just do a quick look and see if I have any left. I think I sold most of them for cash money in the previous league, but I may have a couple of them lying around that nobody wanted. So just bear with me momentarily. Ah, yeah, here they are. Okay. Yeah. Yes, so these are Scarabs. And each of them does a new thing. So this one says 200% more rare Elder items found in the area. This one guarantees Parandus chests, so you can always get Parandus coins if you use these. Pretty terrible. This one has 2 additional Harbingers are in the area. That's pretty good. The more horrendous chests, complete trash. So the ones that are really good are you can guarantee an area will have one of the holdover league mechanics that are now have become permanent. So the sulfite is how you go into, so you can go into the depths of the the azurite mines. You need sulfite to go into the mine. I'll probably make a video discussing that mechanic at large. But this guarantees that you get more sulfite in an area. And you need the sulfite to go through the mine, so this is a really good one. The sulfite ones are can go for quite a bit of currency, if I'm not mistaken. Same with the ones that are elder. This one guarantees that Einhar will show up. Einhar is from the Bestiary League. They recently changed this mechanic and made it less shit, so Einhar can actually be pretty decent. You can use the beast that he catches as an additional form of crafting, which I'll probably discuss in another video as well. And yeah, so they basically just act as an additional modifier you can slap into maps to make them do extra stuff. So yes, I do believe that is all of the different forms of currency. So in conclusion, if you're going to play this game for any long duration of time, like if you're intending to play this for the long haul, I highly recommend you spend the I don't know, like maybe $5 to get a currency tab, get a map tab, get a fragment tab, and get an essence tab. And if you're really playing for a while, maybe get the card tab, because trying to hold this much currency in normal tabs is impossible, because you can see each of these slots lets you stack up to 5,000 of the thing. If they're in my inventory in a different map tab, like in a different tab, so say I want to put these in this, they come in stacks of 20. I'd have to fill up the entire fucking tab with just my alteration. And I mean, look at how much alteration orbs I have on standard. I have above 5,000. I've got 5,000 here, and I had even more down here. I used a bunch of them crafting something. I forget what I was doing. I had an additional 2,000 down here as well. So just imagine trying to contain all of this currency in tabs. It's impossible. You'd use all your tabs just doing this. So I recommend get a currency tab, store this shit up, and buy stuff from other people. Get the trading going. Path of Exile as a game is a much better game when you treat it like if you treat the currency like it's actual currency. So buy stuff, craft your shit, get good, and have a wonderful day.